But I think the way that I compensated for it as a child was to be teacher's pet,
Yeah.
type A, like, so overly doing things, over control of everything in the day to day. And then you become a mom, and then you become a homeschooling mom, and then you become a homeschooling mom who's running a business. And there is so little in my control.
Welcome to the Homeschool Perspective, where seasoned homeschooling moms share tips, insights, and resources to empower your homeschool journey.
Well, you guys, we had the best conversation after we finished recording last time. We were talking all about sensory overload that can happen to moms and the really incredibly real feeling that can make it challenging to homeschool and mom the way you intend to. And we decided that this would be a great conversation to bring here to the homeschool perspective. So let's jump in. According to a study by the Pew Research Center, a staggering 86% of mothers with children under the age of 18 report feeling rushed in their daily lives. And according to the National Institute for Health, as many as 32% of moms experience anxiety. That is a lot. So I'm curious, ladies, what does sensory overwhelm look like for you? And what causes it?
I didn't even realize that this was happening for me, and then for a long time. And I would, my shoulders would just start to come up, and it always happened. This is terrible, but it would always happen when my husband got home from work. Like that's when it would hit me. And it was like I was always in the kitchen. We eat our dinners a little later because we want Chris to be home when we're eating. And so like I would be finishing up dinner or whatever. And it was just like this like rise in chaos that would happen. And when he came through the door, it was like just another person. And I was just like, it just would rise up in me. And then I finally realized what it is, that it is, I am just getting totally overloaded. The rest of the day, I feel like I just kind of shut down, like I just zone out to kind of manage that. Or that's how I notice that I'm getting overloaded, is that I'm just like zoning out. But yeah, it took me a really, really long time to even realize that this was happening for me.
That almost sounds like restraint collapse. Have you heard of that?
No.
So restraint collapse is something that we see a lot in, especially in kiddos who are neurodivergent. But I'm not saying that you are. This is like, it sounds very similar, where they'll go to a drop off, they'll go to a church program, they'll go to school. And when they come home and they keep it together all day and they do really, really well. And the second they get home and their safe people are there and they're in their safe place,
Yes.
It's like the ability to restrain all of that stuff that builds up throughout the day just goes.
Yep.
So I'm like, probably not great for your husband, but also like he's your person, right?
Right.
It's like, you're home now. Now I can't handle this anymore. Like it's been too much all day.
Yeah.
And now my body is just like, nope, can't process anymore.
Yeah, that's yes. And I have kids that do that same thing.
Yeah.
So I just didn't know the name of what it was called, but yes, that is a very real feeling. So when that happens, a lot of times I'll go outside and I would, I'll go outside, I'll sit on the front porch. I've even like taken my dinner out there, which I love to eat dinner as a family, but sometimes like it's just too much. And I'm like, I just look at my husband and he just like nods. I just leave. I'm like, I'm tapping out. It's all you. Do the crazy wild thing for dinner. I need a minute.
I do that too.
Yeah.
I'll take my dinner, not all the time, but there are times where I'm like, I'm gonna take my dinner upstairs, or like I'm going to get in the bath and I'll have dinner later. Yeah, I definitely have done that. But
so when
what
you
causes
get
it?
overwhelmed, what do you look like, Allie, when you get that overwhelm, and what is your trigger for it?
My kiddos, well, I feel like I'm saying my kiddos. I think a lot of kiddos do this, especially you're home, you're homeschooling, you're with all your children. They all have so many great ideas and so much that they are bursting to share all the time. And my kids will talk over each other. We work on it, but I will have, and part of it is my fault because I was able to hold multiple conversations. And then I get to a point where like I'm holding 3 different conversations with them at the exact same time. And I just am like, it's like, I feel like deer in headlights. It's like my brain just stops. And what I've been trying to do lately, because for me, it's like, I don't even know. My whole body, it feels like it just inflates with electricity. I'm like, yeah, just everything feels too much. And what I've been trying to do is when that happens, I start singing my next instruction for my kids. So I know that is so random and weird, but I would go straight to yelling. I'd be like, guys, everybody back up. Sorry, that was probably really loud in the microphone. But I'm like, okay, everybody, mom is done, right? Like that's where, and it, it wasn't really fair because like I'm doing it, we're going. There's not really a warning, and my body just like, bah, done, because I've ignored all of the overwhelm to start with. And then I would just be like, I'm done. So I go, okay, mommy is ready to, and like start singing it. I know it's so weird, but singing actually, there's a bunch of science behind like singing, like rests and relaxes your throat and like shifts the gear.
Mhm.
So I've started doing that, trying to do that instead of losing my mind and yelling.
Yeah, singing and humming and all of that kind of stuff resets your nervous system. Like it helps in that way. Like so I do that too, and it's just like the weird. I mean like it's just like the weird thing that I do. I'm like, "Okay, we're going to move on." Like and it's kind of it's silly and shocking too to my kids that it kind of helps them be like, "Okay, wait, mom's being weird now." Now, like what's going on?
It
Like
like breaks the tension.
it does, and then they pay attention to whatever I say next because it's it's a pattern
Novel.
interrupt is what it is,
Mhm.
right? So I am just kind of like, I'm done, and like you said, like I don't want to like yell and just be like, "Ah!" Like pay attention, knock it off. It's just a different way of doing that and getting their attention. So you just kind of like, yeah, I do that, and but also sometimes I just leave. Like like during the day when we're doing something and like that tension is building and building and building, I'm like I just leave. I'm like, Mama needs a minute. And I just tell them, mom, and my kids get it because I have kids like this that definitely have sensory
Yeah.
struggles. And like we've done occupational therapy for it, and like it's like a real thing. And I know from going through that with my child, like I said at the beginning, I didn't realize that these were sensory triggers or this was a sensory overload. Like I just was so used to for so many years just powering through and just going with it and just doing the thing and never even really thinking about like myself being overloaded or overwhelmed in any way. Like I just go. I just go and I get it done and I do the thing and I do what I need to do. I go, 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 go. Like that's just what I do. And then when we started to go through this with my son and realize that, yeah, this is a real thing. Like this is a real thing that he struggles with, and we can see it so much in this little child because he doesn't have any like he didn't have a filter at all. We knew everything he was thinking. But and helping him through that struggle and taking him to occupational therapy and going through that and learning more about it, I started to like it started to mirror. And I was like, "Oh, okay, now I can see that in me." Um, where I don't know if I would have ever recognized what it was and that I was feeling that way. Um, and I don't remember feeling that so much as a child. Like I don't remember that at all. But as an adult and just with homeschooling and having 4 kids and just having um the big personalities that we have and having a child with sensory needs too, that
Mhm.
you feel like you have to hold it all together for them. And I just felt like I was, sometimes I feel like I'm holding all of the emotions for all of the people in the family, and then that really gets to be a lot and gets to be really overwhelming.
It is a lot.
Yeah.
I feel like you touched on something too, though, that a lot of the times we don't realize that it is sensory related at all.
Right.
That it can be that it's too loud and too much touch and too
Mm.
fast and too rushed, and whatever it is. I think a lot of times we're so hard on ourselves as moms. Like it, we want to blame ourselves. We want to take the guilt because we want to do so well for our kids. And
Mhm.
so I feel like for me and for a lot of the families I work with, moms I work with, that it's almost easier to blame ourselves and say like we lost our temper, we didn't. And I'm not saying this to like obfuscate responsibility or say we don't have responsibility for how we react in these
Right.
situations, but the more understanding we can have of what's leading up to and causing it, the more grace we can have, and then we can actually solve it. Because if you know now, when you can recognize like, hey, it's been way too loud for me for too long and my
Yeah.
brain can't process anymore, then there's an actual tangible action you can take to resolve that. Whereas if it's just like, you need to be better, you need to be calmer, you need to be kinder, whatever kind of that attitude, and you completely miss this possibility, there really isn't a solution to that because you're not solving the actual problem.
Hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. I was probably in my 30s before I realized that not everybody was sensitive to the sound of the electricity humming in the walls, or
Mm.
hearing all of those tiny things that would set me on edge as a child. And I learned to, I guess, mask it, not really deal
Mhm.
with it, right? And then all of a sudden here I am as a mom with 7 kids. And it was when I was pregnant with number 7, and I was talking to the doctor about how I was so much more sensitive to the sounds even than usual. And she's like, "What do you mean?" And I was telling her, she's like, "Yeah, I want you to go talk to somebody about this." She's like, "I think you have a sensory processing disorder." And I was like, "Oh, what now?"
Oh,
And that was kind of the beginning for me to have that awareness. And it was great because once you know that you're sensitive to something, you can start dealing with it. And you don't always have to wait until it's exploding, right? Like until it's
Mhm.
ready to come out of you. You can handle it ahead of time. And it's made me so much more compassionate. I have, out of our 8 kids, half of them have sensory sensitivities in some level or another. And as I've learned to accept it in myself, and I'll verbally process about it with the kids, hey, mommy's feeling overwhelmed right now. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go outside and I'm going to sit and do some breathing.
mhm.
Or I'm going to make a cup of tea. And when I'm done with my tea, we'll talk. And I go through the process of brewing it and pouring it into the pot and pouring it in the cup. And something about that ritual is really soothing to me. Well, the other day, one of my kids got super overwhelmed, and I heard them say, I'm going to go make a cup of tea now. And when I'm done drinking it, we'll talk about it. And I
Oh,
was so
wow.
proud of them.
Look
I
at
was like,
that
yes,
modeling.
Yay. I
yes.
That's
love
awesome.
that.
And I will walk around with loops that fit in my ear, just like this,
Yeah.
earplugs. I love them. I really don't like the feel of something in my ear, but in this summer heat, they're better than big ones over my ears, even though actually the sensory pressure of that comforts me as well as the noise blocking.
Mhm.
And so one day our youngest was getting really overwhelmed at church. They had turned up the music louder than usual. And I just pulled out my headphones and I popped them in her ears. And she later told me, she goes, I have never enjoyed being out of the house as much as I did today. She's like, I could enjoy so many more things
Oh,
because the noise
interesting.
didn't hurt my body. And I was like,
Mhm.
oh, okay. I now I can help you. This is great. So we got her a pair of over the ear earphones that are like, were old gaming headphones that were broken. We cut the cords off of them. And every now and then she'll just walk around with them for a couple hours in a day. And people will talk to her and she'll answer. She can hear, but it just muffles everything so she can cope better.
Yeah.
And people will be like, do you want to take those off? We're going to go out. She goes, so what? And, like one of her siblings might be, well, you look funny. And she goes, but I feel good. And that's okay. And I'm like, yes, because, when I was a kid, I didn't have anyone talking to me about that. And so when we talk about overwhelm as moms, I think it's really important that we are honest about it in the context
Mhm.
of our family. Because if we're feeling it, we have this
Yep.
beautiful gift we can give our kids where they don't have to wait until they lose it and have all these mom regrets and mom guilt and go, how do I figure this out? We
Mhm.
can equip them now with the tools, so maybe they won't have those same experiences that we had, not having it talked about when we were kids.
Do you guys all have or both have kids that struggle with sensory or auditory processing in
Yeah,
some way?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I
absolutely.
have one to the extreme end of
Mhm.
that, and then, yeah, definitely. I
Okay.
think it's also, oh, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, but I want to hear from both of you like what those things are. Like Allie was just or Lisa was just saying that her daughter likes the over the ear, headphones like that muffles the sound. Like what are like those things for your kids that are the things that help them, because I think that could be
Yeah.
really, helpful, to hear.
Mhm.
But and then what helps you as well? And do you think did our kids get this from us, or is this like,
They're doing research on that right now,
yeah,
actually. When I was looking up like studies and things for today, they're looking at that, and I think and they're finding that yes, there is a lot of transfer there. There are people who are just more sensitive, more aware. The same with like learning differences and
Mhm.
all of these other things. There appears to be some sort of genetic component to it. And when I even looking back, because I always think like, oh, I have siblings who have that, I have a parent who had that. I'm not really like, well, I don't think I did, but I think the way that I compensated for it as a child was to be teacher's pet,
Yeah.
type A, like so overly doing things, over control of everything in the day to day. And then you become a mom, and then you become a homeschooling mom, and then you become a homeschooling mom who's running a business. And there is so little in my control. There's so little out
Right.
of our control. So there's, you have to start managing things differently. So for my kiddos, some of the things that help, we do the headphones as well. Headphones are a huge, huge deal. And as my kiddo's getting older, because he used to wear, do you guys know jewelry?
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, so jewelry, for anybody listening who hasn't heard of it, it's like jewelry, like a necklace or a bracelet that's designed for kids to chew on. And that proprioception, that feeling and feedback of chewing can be really helpful for calming the nervous system down. But as my kiddos are getting older, they don't want to do things like that. And they don't want to have the big, cute headphones anymore. They want something just a little different. And so listening to books on tape in a headphone is, something that's been helpful. And then gum. I found a gum I'm comfortable with. I'm pretty picky about ingredients and stuff, but I found one that I like. And I have a kiddo. We just have it on like bulk order in Amazon,
Yeah.
because chewing gum is just this really great way to let some of the it's kind of like letting some air out of the tire. It's like before it explodes, it's just one of those things that just keeps a constant stream of like that extra stuff coming out, so it stays more even. The other things are exercise is a huge deal. So trampoline, um the trampoline has been the best one because it gives that proprioception. So proprioception is knowing where your body is in space. And
Mhm.
so a lot of people who struggle with sensory issues, they don't get that feedback. Whereas like, you might clap your hands and you feel that pressure and you are aware of it, you know where your hands are in space. Somebody who has sensory differences, they might not necessarily feel that. It might be too light, it might be too hard. Their brain is not grabbing at that information the same way. And it's almost like the way like learning about this with my oldest, the way to like explain it to people who've never felt it is when you get on an airplane and you've been on an airplane for 14 hours, like a
Mhm.
really long plane ride. And even if you've gotten up a few times, that like feeling in your muscles that's like electricity is like itching to move. You're like, I
Mhm.
can't, it's like that all the time. And they can't tell that they have moved. So deep pressure activities give them that proprioception, that knowing where their body is in space, so that that vibration, that like eek feeling doesn't build up. And
Yep.
so trampoline has been a huge one because their own body pressure is giving like extra feedback. And then we have like a bicycle and a rowing machine. And then my kiddos who struggle with sensory things more, their chores are things that are heavy work.
Yes.
So like they're the ones that are carrying the laundry up and down the stairs or things like that. So we try to build it and integrate it into their day where they're getting these things that just like let a little bit a little air out of the tires all throughout the day.
Yeah. One of my kids also has that vestibular sense that he needs
Mm.
to reset, and so
Spinning.
the spinning, yeah. So lots and lots of spinning. So we have a swing in his room that will spin, and we have but swinging also, just swinging in
Yep.
general helps. So we have a swing in our front yard actually that hangs from the tree, and like my
Cool.
kids are on that, like, and it's so good because I see like my kids when they're thinking, they will, one in particular will spin in a circle. Like he'll just walk in a circle when he's processing it. And then sometimes he will go outside and he will swing on the swing in the front yard, or he'll go upstairs and swing and spin in his spinny swing in his room. So swinging is a huge one.
Yeah.
I've also seen and love the teeter totters that spin. Have you seen those? They
Yes.
go up
No.
and down and they spin around in a circle. Those are fun. And those are like, hey, like those were created by like an occupational therapist or something. Like they were like, let's hit it all. Like, let's get proprioceptive. Let's get vestibular. Let's get these sensory kids regulated. So I love that. And it's just that we don't have one. My sister does. And it's just, it's fun. The kids love it.
I feel like a link for that needs to go in the show notes so
Yeah.
I can grab it too.
Yeah. Yeah. So we also have a chewer, different kid. All of the buttons off his shirts when he was little, they were gone. He would just eat like everything. While if he was watching TV, he ate a pool noodle. And I'm like, that's probably not good for you. Like what? I had the great idea when he was 2 or yeah, he was whenever he was transitioning into his big bed to put the pool noodle under the fitted sheet,
Yeah.
so he wouldn't roll out of bed. And he was eating it. I was like, what? Like, how did you get that out? And oh my goodness. Anyway,
They're
but
amazing.
with
We have a bunk
What they
bed
can do,
that looks like a
it
beaver
just always
attack.
blows my mind.
it was nuts. Yeah. So we actually he had a tongue tie that was that needed to be released. And that was part of the all of that going on with the sensory and the tongue and his whole body. So as I don't know, he was probably 10 or maybe 11, I think, when he had that finally done. And then when we were going through that whole process, it was like, oh, that's, why he struggled with this. And that's why he struggled with that. And that's why he had things in
Mm.
his mouth. And they would, the ENT and the orofacial therapist were like talking to us, asking us questions. And I'm like, that's related? What? And they're like, oh, yeah. And I'm like, oh, like all of the pieces started to click into place. But yeah, that was one that was really hard for him. But he also, the gum, it really helps him as
Mhm.
well. Like that is such a good one. And the heavy work, and big hugs. Like I just
We
would
do,
grab him
yeah.
and hug, do the big bear hugs too.
So we see that a lot. We do love sandwiches. We'll
I
get
love
like
it.
one person in the middle and we'll surround them and we'll hug them tight. And it calms everybody right down.
Yeah.
We'll give our kids nuts to chew. They'll crack them and then they'll chew them. And that seems to really help too.
Oh,
Yeah.
have to try
Anything
that.
that takes a long time.
Yes.
Yeah. What
I
were you
I
going to
have a
say?
kiddo who they can't tolerate the hugs. Like hugs are
Right. Because
not a comfortable thing.
there's they seek it, they seek
Uh-huh.
those things, or they are trying to avoid those things and they cannot tolerate. So there's both sides when we're
Yeah.
dealing with sensory issues.
I was just thinking too, as we were talking, I'm like, oh my goodness, we have strategies for days for our kids. But I mean, Lisa, you mentioned a couple that you use for yourself.
Yeah.
This is something that I'm still figuring out for myself. Like I have started wearing these headphones when I'm working because I'm like on high alert for my kids all the time. So even when there's someone else here with them, even if they're not home, I feel like my brain has become wired for like to be on high alert all the time. And so I can't get that deep focus. So I am doing things like that. But this is an area where I'm still learning and growing. So what things are working for you guys?
Well, we're big fans of, you mentioned singing. Now, I like to sing. I don't sing well. So in an effort not to punish my family, I will often play the radio and kind of sing along myself. But we will do a dance party. We will like cut
Yes.
up in the kitchen. We have this big open spot between our kitchen and our dining room where there's no furniture. And we have an Amazon Echo Dot in there. And we'll queue up like old songs like Rockin' Robin or, Splish Splash, something like
Those are my
that.
favorite.
Yeah,
Yeah.
love them for dance parties. And we'll get going. And every now and then I'll pull something crazy out of like the 80s. But usually we stick with like the 50s, 60s and bebop around. And it really helps. I use bilateral music myself. I find it very calming. I really like it. My kids are kind of like, oh, this is interesting.
Do you wanna
Um,
explain just in case that
Yes.
nobody
yeah.
or somebody out there doesn't know what it is? Yeah.
So bilateral music is music that plays on one side and then the other. And there are people who say that you can hold your cell phone up like this and play a bilateral song and hear it if you hold it
Mhm.
at like the just below the nose level. But if you wear over the ear headphones, you can hear it more. It doesn't work as well with the earbuds, I've noticed.
It
But
makes
it's
my
very
eyes go
calming.
crazy. My eyes when I listen to bilateral music, my eyes do what I'm hearing.
Really?
And so I don't
I
really
wonder if
love
that's the
it.
musician in you.
Probably. It's
Because your brain is trying to like calculate the music in both sides,
I
maybe?
don't
I don't know.
know. I don't know. It kinda drives me nuts, but I'm like, "This is cool." And I just kinda like I like it a little bit, but I don't know if it works to reset my nervous system. I don't know. Maybe I need to try it for that purpose and see if it does.
I also think that there's that 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 grounding technique where it's like 5 things you can see and so on.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
And my kids like that. I get overwhelmed by it, right? If I'm overwhelmed by everything going on around me, the last thing I want to do is try to tune into it more.
Yeah.
So I go the other way. And I think that's why, as moms, it's so important to realize that there are all these tools, but what one works for you. So I love the dance party with the kids because it resets the body. And I mean, you got to move. Like, you can't just stand there and go
Yeah.
like this. You got to like woo, move.
Right.
And and it really does help. But so for the observations, I tend to close my eyes and I think and I count down with things that I'm thankful for. And that gives me a moment to reset my brain back to positivity and out of overwhelm or out of frustration.
Mhm.
And it gives me a minute to breathe and close my eyes.
Hmm.
So I think those are two really big things for me. And then, like I said, I like the ritual. I mean, I'm a coffee drinker. So if either making a cappuccino or brewing a pot of tea with one of like my hot cinnamon spice tea that I love.
Mhm.
And just the rituals of making the drinks is
Mhm.
almost more enjoyable than drinking them.
Yeah.
And whenever I can, I love to go outside. And I'm not an outside person. I'm really not an outdoorsy person, but I am learning that there is something really healing and soothing and restoring outside in nature in the sun and to go out. So now I drink my coffee or my tea outside every day, morning,
Yeah.
afternoon, and evening. I'm going outside at least a few times a day on my own, not just with the kids, like just to be. And it's so helpful just for 2 or 3 minutes, but it's really helpful.
Mhm.
I love that. I'm also like, as I'm listening to your things, I'm like, oh, I do know these things, but I feel like sometimes I struggle to do them. But the reason, what I've realized is if I am not taking care of my sleep, or that if I haven't eaten, which it's so easy for those two to go out the
Oh,
door for
yeah.
me,
Me too.
right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
so easy to go out the door. Then when I'm like, okay, but I know these tools and I can use these tools, I can't use them or they're not effective. And my husband will come home and be like, well, when did you eat? And I'm like, oh,
I
maybe I should
forgot.
do that. I totally
My husband
forgot.
thinks it's so weird that I forget to eat, and I
My
mean, he is,
husband
like,
too.
planning like, he's a personal trainer, so he's, like he's got his meals prepped and planned and, all the things, and
Yeah.
and he's like, "How do you not eat?" And I'm like, "I don't know." But then you
I
start to
had
feel the
breakfast at nine
sensory.
o'clock last
But the
night.
Yeah.
sensory stuff's so much worse, right?
Yeah.
It gets so
Mhm.
much worse. And so I'm like, this summer in particular, I'm really, because I feel like the summertime, even though we school year round, it's just kind of a more relaxed time. There's just
Right.
a little less going on. We have a little more space in our day. And so I'm really trying to focus on getting habits in place where I am getting the sleep that I need, that we're all getting the sleep that we need. But, really being like, no, I'm going to go to bed. This is the time I'm turning everything off. I'm going to bed. And then trying to get prepping routines in
Mhm.
place so that there are things that like, okay, no, I'm going to eat, like things like that. I'm trying to really use the summer um, to get some habits in place so that I have more of a baseline to deal with these things from. What about you guys? Do you do anything like that to help you kind of, it's almost
Yeah.
like the precursor to mitigating the sensory overload.
Yeah, when so I need quiet, but not just
Mm.
quiet around me. I need like quiet in my mind. That's a big one for me
Mhm.
because even if it's quiet, I'm talking to myself or, thinking
Parent
and
teacher conference.
yeah, exactly.
Right?
Um, um, but I'm busy. I am very busy inside this brain,
Yeah.
all the time. Some things that really quiet it for me is being in around water. Water is
Mhm.
so good for me. And and so like showers, like I have my best thoughts in the shower.
Yeah.
My best because it really does calm my brain, and then the answer or the thing that I'm thinking about or that I've been struggling with or the thing that's been bouncing around for a long time will just
Mhm.
come to me. The same thing with like in the pool. I teach swim lessons, and I'm in the pool year round, at least once a week. And so for the longest time, I was like, oh, I don't want to get my hair wet, while I'm teaching. So I would kind of try to avoid getting my hair wet because it's kind of a hassle when it's the middle of January and your hair's wet. But then when I realized how much water does for me, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to, in between lessons, float. And I'm going to just enjoy this time and just float. Like people pay money for sensory pool experiences. I'm going to go and I'm just going to use this as an opportunity to really like help my nervous system. And so I've been doing that all this year. And it has helped. It helps so much. And then I shower and wash and dry my hair while I'm at the gym. I don't know why I didn't think that was an option before, but anyway, I digress. My hair is fine. But that just being in and around water are huge for me. And then also, like you were saying, being in nature, taking walks, exercising, all of those things, and even just sitting on my front porch in the morning. Now, my kids follow me, but the sun hits our front porch. So even when it's
Mhm.
like 40 degrees, and I can sit on the front porch and sweat, and because it's like the sun is like right in my face, and it is just the best. That is the best feeling. One time I was feeling really overwhelmed in the house, and I think that I was messaging both of you, and I was like, I just realized I am halfway around my neighborhood and I am barefoot, and I had just like gotten really overwhelmed, like like just really overstimulated, and I just left the house. And no, it's not uncommon for anyone in my family to be barefoot outside. Like that is just a common occurrence for us. But I was like just like I didn't even realize I was doing it. I just started walking. I walked out my front door, and halfway around my neighborhood, I was like, "Oh, I'm barefoot," and just I think I almost stepped in dog poop, and that's when I realized I was barefoot. But I was like, "Oh, okay, okay."
But it was almost. So
It was
you're
it was
good.
almost. I was good. I was good.
Almost. You're good.
Yeah. So I don't know. Those are things like, but exercise really helps just to
Yeah.
mitigate it before it gets there. But it's hard because like we have a gym in our garage, and my kids come out there.
Mhm.
I sit on my front porch, and the kids follow me, and so I go on a walk and they want to come with me. And while I love it, these are the strategies that I'm trying to have in place so that I can manage this, and I can keep from getting too overstimulated, too um just crazy, in my mind,
Mhm.
especially. And so it's hard with all the kids around me all the time to really create that space. And there's only so much. I'm not a morning person. There's only so much I can do before before they get up and get started. And I'm not going to go do this at 11 p.m. So, it's like I got to find things for them to do to keep them busy,
Mhm.
and just really explain to them that okay, mom needs a break. I'm going to do this. I'm doing this for me, and I really need it quiet while I'm doing it.
So let's take a minute and give really practical suggestions. We're talking about how important these things are, but if you are a busy mom who is already overwhelmed, like if we're talking to somebody who's not getting enough sleep or who isn't
Mm.
eating enough, like me yesterday having breakfast at 9 p.m. The whole day
What?
got away. I just kept saying, yeah, I kept saying, I just need 10 minutes to eat in quiet. And yesterday was so chaotic. My 10 minutes didn't come until 9 o'clock at night. And I was like, oh, this isn't healthy. Right. So I know, and it's funny because I know this propensity in myself. And usually I'll have like little bags of nuts and cube cheese and things like that ready for me when I can't cook something or make something and eat it. And I'll just, like I've been known to hide in the bathroom for 2 minutes and eat just to be alone because
Mhm.
I need that sometimes. But if we're not talking about damage control, if we're talking about like finding space to create these habits, what's one tip that each of you would give to a mom who's overwhelmed?
Gosh, I think especially if you are so deep in the hole right now with your overwhelm and your overload, it can feel defeating, I think, at times to listen to all of the options, all the things that we can be doing, all of the things that we should be doing to keep our sensory cups, at a manageable level and to stay calm. I think if you're a mom in the moment where you're like just so in the hole here, like where it's just the idea of adding more things to your list to try to navigate the things that are overwhelming you is just like blowing your mind, overwhelming. I think each of us can say that we have been in that state. I don't
Mhm.
want to speak for you, but I like
Oh yeah.
there's a time where it's like, are you kidding me? You want me to do 30 more things to try to, and I think if you're someone who's in that space right now, what I would say that the thing that unclogs the dam really is sleep. And there's so much science behind it. There's so much there. Sleep is the first thing. I feel like that if you are at a place where you just are completely overdone, cannot think, cannot implement another system, cannot process in that moment, if you can focus on figuring out sleep for yourself. And if you have sensory kiddos, I get that sleep is so hard.
Yeah.
But if that can be the thing that you focus on, whether that means, and then let go of the other stuff. If that means that you're going to start your day later so that you can get sleep in the early morning hours, because there was a time when I had a kiddo who did not sleep at
Yes.
all. And then we had a window where he could sleep like in the early morning hours. So where I was used to getting up early, getting things done, getting our day started, we shifted. And, we slept from 4 a.m. to 9 a.m., like whatever you have to do. I feel like sleep is the one thing that makes all the other things a little easier to figure out and manage and deal with. So if you're just completely overwhelmed, don't know where to start, that's what I would suggest finding a space for. That can also be that on the weekends your husband is going to take the kiddos and let you sleep in or something like that. But I would say sleep is a really big part of letting all of this other stuff be available to you and start to calm down.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And I would add, the first step for me was give yourself permission to accommodate yourself. Right? Like we even started talking about how we felt and then we shifted to all these awesome strategies for our kids cuz as
Right.
moms we're wired to prioritize them and put them first. And it was such, I guess, a gift that I gave myself and my kids, giving myself permission to take care of me. Like I needed to have that mental shift to know that showing up my best was best for them. So it was okay to do something like that. And so sleep is huge. Like I absolutely agree with that. As somebody who gets overwhelmed by noise, by touch, by all the things, I can't just put myself in a bubble and stop living. So I would pick 3 minutes, 5 minutes in the afternoon. Now it's up to like 15. It's beautiful. But at the
Mhm.
beginning, when the kids were not used to me saying, Mommy needs quiet, I would literally set a timer on the microwave that counts down. And I'd be like, okay, until this goes off, we're not going to talk. We're just going to sit here. You can look at a book, you can play with your Play Doh. And we started so small because they were young.
Yeah.
And we grew, and now we have like 15 minutes of quiet. And it's so funny because my older kids have told me that when I travel, the younger kids ask for it. They're like, "Hey, can we do our quiet time even though mommy's not here?" Because they like it. It helps everybody reset. And I might stretch my arms, I might walk around, I might just sit and breathe. I might drink a cup of coffee or tea, I might read a book, I might do nothing.
Right.
But I give myself permission just to have that time because for me, from like 5 o'clock on at night, like dinner time, bedtime, it's so chaotic. I can't do it unless I have that quiet time heading into it.
One
And
other oh,
we're happier. I say we're happier because I don't melt down. You know what I mean?
oh, yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, for sure. One thing that I'm going to add to that is when my husband works crazy schedule, crazy hours. He has to leave early in the morning, and then because he gets all the people who want to work out before their work day, and then he does work all day long, and then he works after the people are off work. So he doesn't get home until later as well. So there was a period of time where I had, and it's still like that, but his schedule has definitely gotten better over the years. But I had all three of my older boys for like sun up to sundown, and they were busy. They were toddlers. They were 5, 3, and 1, and my life was chaos. And it was there was a lot, and I was trying to homeschool my oldest, and even the next couple of years as my second got into school age, trying to do the homeschool thing while holding it all together from sun up to sundown without any other adults, helping me. And used screen time to really help me get those 15 minutes, because they were really crazy kids. I Sometimes when I was like breastfeeding my kids, they would leave the house as toddlers, and it was like a safety thing. It was crazy. One time I couldn't find my second son when I was putting my third down for a nap. I couldn't find him. I came downstairs after putting him down, and the front door was wide open. We lived on a busy street, and I ran outside looking for him. I was calling his name. I was like, like yelling for him, and he was buck naked on the back deck, playing in the sandbox. This is my sensory kid. So looking back, we see what was happening there. But he never wore clothes when he was little. Never wore clothes. He was naked all the time. I had to, just to keep underwear on him was a struggle. But he had walked out the front door buck naked and ran around the house to the backyard. Anyway, so so in order for everyone to be safe, in order for me to get the time and get that just moment of calm, I had to put on shows. And sometimes you have to do that. Like it was a safety thing. It kept my kids occupied. I had to put my baby down for a nap, and I was noticing that because that was a quiet time that I had when I was putting my babies down, that I was like maybe taking a little extra time because it was so quiet and peaceful, that but then the safety of my older two were being compromised. So I had to, if I put them in front of the screens and let them watch their shows while I was doing that, I could get the youngest one down and then go and give myself another way where I could still supervise and not let the running out of the house naked incident repeat, but I could, still be in control and there, but use the screens, use the shows. We don't want to let the screens raise our kids, but there is a moderation there. And that is a tool that you can use to give yourself a minute, So that, and then, if you are, not wanting to use screens 100% all the time, take your kids to the park. Let them run. Like that was another thing that I did. That was like just a way they were entertained. And it's like the noise level is higher, just because of the sheer amount of kids running around, but they're not all running at you with all that noise, and they're not all doing that. And it's a way that I could at least calm and quiet and collect myself, and have my own thoughts for a minute while they were safe and I could see them and they were doing something that wasn't so like that didn't need me to be there in it with them, and they could just go and do that.
We like the parks that have gates around them.
Oh, those are the best.
Like,
yes,
we have like the parks that we go to. Also, I just want to say your story about the front door. I feel like that's so relatable, and we don't talk about that kind of stuff, but I think that is a deeply relatable situation. I think a lot of us have been in that place. And, going back to what Lisa said, giving yourself permission to be like, hey, this is where we're at. This is a tool. And when we're using these things as tools to serve and keep our family safe and functioning and thriving, that is a gift. It's, Anyway, I like that. I want to say that it's a relatable moment, and just that I think a lot of us have been there,
Yeah.
and that this is a perfect example of giving yourself that permission and just doing what you need to do so that everybody is peaceful and thriving for whatever that has to look like.
And
I
safe.
want to jump in and say that, as moms, we often talk about getting away from our kids, and we did it here too, taking a moment to give yourself what you need. But you can also use connection as a way to regulate.
Mhm.
And, whether you're a touchy person or not a touchy person. So I'm not saying always hug. Like, I don't mean that kind of connection. But there is a time when coming together and having a ritual or a routine or a tradition, whatever you want to call it, for that can also help you and your kids regulate. We've created a rhythm where every evening we say three things we're thankful for at the dinner table. We love that. It's a mental reset for us before going into bedtime. But we also have a rhythm where right before bed, we all gather in the same room. We all, some people snuggle, some people sit all by themselves, curl up in a couch with a pillow next to them so nobody else sits there, right? Like everybody has their own flavor of what this looks like for them. But we all come together in the same room and we pray together and we say goodnight. And it's really simple. And, sometimes I'll sing the kids a song because they'll ask, sometimes they won't. Sometimes it'll be a story, but whatever, we have this moment and it's only like 5 minutes, but it's precious and it helps us regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mhm.
sometimes in the middle of the day, I'll be like, everybody to the fireplace. And we sit in even in the summer, we don't, have a fire going or anything, but it's where we kind of cozy up and it's different. It's different
Mm-hmm.
than the family room with all the toys and the stimulation, right? It's just this quiet, calm place. And I intentionally keep it very minimal. And we'll sit there and be like, you know what? I know it's not bedtime, but let's just sit here. Like let's regroup, let's reset. And so it's important to remember that we can regulate and we can nourish and nurture together too, not just alone. And I think, like that could be a whole nother episode, honestly, but it's something that a lot of times I notice in mom conversations, we talk about getting away from our kids to
Mhm.
recover. But, our kids are gifts too. Like there's both sides. We need alone time. We
Right.
need time to recharge, but we also need time to connect. And when you're really connected, at least in our home, I've noticed when we're really connected, everybody is more regulated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Well, and
and there's a
kind of a
safety
middle
in,
ground.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's just safety in admitting it.
Mhm. I agree. I think that there's also a middle ground if you're in a place where your kiddos are going to follow you to all of the things. There's also something that can be really regulating for you and for everyone else is doing something that you really love. Something that is because one thing I was reading something the other day. They were talking about chemically in the brain, what do you think is the opposite of trauma? You guys
Play.
heard this?
Yeah,
It's
it's play.
play.
Oh, yeah.
The opposite of trauma, the like antidote to trauma. Now, I'm not saying that overwhelm and sensory are trauma, but just to show you like the actual like the mirror of something so awful is play. And I think for me at least, that's something that has just gone so far out of my brain, out of the waste, like off to the side of things that like I really enjoy that I love to play with. But doing those things with your kids, including them, bringing them in on that, can be another way to connect and fill your bucket at the same time, and get you regulated. And I think again, all of these things that we instantly go to our kids and what they want, what they not want, but like what they need and how we can support them. But also them witnessing like your kiddo seeing you do tea and then modeling that for themselves later, right? When they can see us really enjoying things and playing with things, then they're going to come in on that as well. And so another way to connect can be to just share something that you love, that makes you laugh, that makes you smile, that is playful for you. It doesn't always have to be coming to what they are already in, or changing what you're trying to do. My kiddos they want to come work with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm doing like my morning time, I'll get out a journal for the kiddo who comes and sits down. And even if they're pretending like they want to parallel, they want to do that. So you can also, I mean, don't be afraid to bring them in on that stuff. They, even if you think it's like, not their thing, if it's something you love that lights you up, I guarantee they're going to want to be involved.
I did that with our morning time with our homeschool at one point because we were having a hard time getting started and I wanted my kids to play. And at the beginning of the day, I wanted them to play so I could have my coffee. Like that was like, I'm like, you all play, I'm drinking my coffee, then we'll get started. That's how I wanted the morning to work. And it wasn't working. So I shifted to playing with them. Now, I'm not going to get on the floor. Like I struggle with that. Like getting on the floor and playing little dinosaurs and things like that was I tried. I did it while they were the littles and I did it, but I can't. Like I can't get into the imagination games because you always do it wrong, right? You're never no mommy. No mommy, you say this. No, mommy, no. It's always wrong. Like
That dinosaur growls like a tiger, not an
I
antelope
know,
or
like
whatever.
it was always wrong. And so I'm like, whatever,
Yeah.
you do it. But so a way that I could do that and still do something that I enjoyed was board games. And I got my kids hooked on board games and we found the coolest board games, card games. Like we love Sleeping Queens. That is the most fun little, game, like quick card game. Like I also love like a 7-minute game. Like give me a 7, 15 at the most minute game. Like we're not sitting down and playing Monopoly for hours. But Monopoly Go, yes. But like those things were we really felt connected because we were playing together. And board games have such a unique opportunity to do that. And they're also so sneaky educational things
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So that's what we did to just totally make over our homeschool mornings. We were playing all the things, like regular board games, not like, there's like those little math games that you can buy. Like, no, we're not doing that. They wouldn't go for that anyway. But we could play Rummy Cube and we could play Sleeping Queens has math concepts and, King Domino, like they're all like, these are, and I have kids that don't really love the competition, overwhelmed by competition. That's part of a sensory thing. And so individual games like those logic games and so it was game time and we had the best time. Those were our best mornings, building connections, strengthening those relationships and regulating all of the I don't know, the nervous system, the chaos, like bringing it together helped in that moment.
That's awesome. So we covered a lot today. We talked all about our overwhelm, like sensory overwhelm, but it can also be environmental overwhelm. It's not always because of sensory. We talked
Mhm.
about our kids having it and what we do with it, and little strategies that we share. And we'd love to hear from you guys if you want to leave comments for us, sharing how you find opportunities in your day to help yourself regulate or ways that you connect with your family to increase that connection. Please share them with us. We also want to encourage you to embrace this summer as an opportunity for growth and connection and also rejuvenation. Like Ali said, she's using this summer to help instill some habits that she wants to carry on past it because the schedule is gentler. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
So, as always, thank you for listening to us here at the Homeschool Perspective. And we would love to see you either on our website at thehomeschoolperspective.com or in the comments below the video. And next episode, you're definitely want to tune in because we're going to talk all about the freedom and independence that belongs to us as homeschoolers and how we're going to celebrate it. Thank you so much.